So 2007 was a big year for our family, and when I say our family, like our family was like we weren't even like engaged yet. We were just getting going, and we were about to get engaged. We had just accepted an internship at another church, and I remember those incredibly long drives we would take from Lynchburg to Williamsburg.
We were in our senior year of college, and we were both serving as resident assistants, which meant that we had to be home for curfew every night to make sure all of our residents were there. So we couldn't leave until about 5 in the morning. So every Sunday morning we would get up about 4:30, leave campus at 5 a.m. and make a 3-hour journey to Williamsburg to really begin our ministry journey. And it was a really defining time, one, because I'm not a morning person, but it really was the beginning of a journey that we didn't even know that God was taking us on.
I think about it, and like when you're meeting at 5 in the morning, like it's still dark outside in the winter. And I remember like we would get out of our dorms, we'd meet in the parking lot, and we'd hop in the car. I think we were driving my old Civic then. We weren't. What car were we driving?
My Eclipse.
All right, we were driving your Eclipse because that car was a lot nicer. And we'd hop in the car and we'd drive down 460 usually, and then we'd hop onto 95 North when we would be on our way to Williamsburg.
We used to look out the window as we were coming around this bend on the interstate and see this beautiful ornate building that, come to find out years later, is actually the Main Street station. And we always would look at it and dream about what it was or what it had been or what it could be. And we always thought, what a great place for a church. Wouldn't that be just a beautiful venue for a church someday? And we had no attachments to Richmond. We weren't stopping through, but we would always admire this building in the last 40-minute stretch of our drive. And it was something that almost every week was on our radar, and that every week we would just ponder, what is this place that we're seeing?
It wasn't a one-time drive, like it was every Sunday morning we were getting up and making that drive. And I love looking back on that and knowing that in 2007, God was already starting to lay a foundation for what he was gonna do in this pocket of Richmond that we're in right now.
And you fast forward 10 years, and little did we know, God was really using that train station as a beacon, in a sense, to really draw and direct us to the area where the Rise Church would be born, and where the next chapter of our ministry beyond the first 10 years that we spent at our previous church was going to entail.
When we look at that moment and we fast forward 10 years, it was literally 10 years, almost to the day, from when we started having those conversations to when the first service happened at our church, which is just, again, mind-boggling to think about.
I was very pregnant when we began searching for where God was going to lead us.
Why do we always do big things when you're pregnant? Like,
why do you always do big things when I'm pregnant? But we started this search. We, after about 2 years of really praying over where God was leading us to start a church, through a variety of just really neat conversations and events that took place, God had defined for us the Richmond area, which was actually a little closer to home than we'd expected, but neat because it allowed day trips for us to go kind of explore and figure out, where God might be leading us. And early in the beginning, probably one of the first days that Michael took a drive up here by himself, he came home and said, "Oh, I think I've found it." And it's literally the first place he went. And it was not downtown, which, we really loved that area in the Shockoe Bottom area. But it was very close. And we went for a visit in the middle of summer just to kind of scope it out. And I was very pregnant and had 2 very little kids who were 1 and 3 at the time. And so even just a 45-minute drive to Richmond was pretty grueling for them. So after we trekked around and he showed me the area, and I was sufficiently car sick, we stopped at the Steak and Shake over at White Oak, thinking this is going to be a great place to stop. And decided that we'd treat the kids to a milkshake and then kind of walk around the area to see where life happened. We ended up moving to Varina and starting to get to know our neighborhood. And as we did, we started to feel that same pull that Michael had felt the very first time that he visited the Varina and Sanson areas. So we went to our launch team, a group of about 40 people who helped us to start the church, and asked them to pray with us.
And so when our team got finished praying, it was 100% Varina is going to be our area, the Varina, Easton, Sandston area. And we began to look into the data, pray as we were going throughout that area. And not only did it seem strategic, but our hearts just fell in love with the area, in love with the people, in love with the culture. And so we said, hey, this is going to be where the home of the Rise Church is. So we started having services in our living room. And we didn't have a building yet. We didn't have many people yet. I remember the first salvation that ever took place was after one of our first services, and it was in our garage, which that's just, I'll never forget that moment. It was awesome. And so we're really feeling like we're getting traction. We're feeling like things are going well. And then as I started to talk with different people in the community, I was asking, hey, is there a need for another church in our area? And one of the most deflating days was when someone told me there's no need for any more churches in the Route 5 corridor or the East End. And like initially, I began questioning are we even on the right journey? But then I kind of looked at it through a different lens and said, you know what, that's actually a great indicator that there is a need for a life-giving church in our area.
And that wasn't to say that other churches weren't doing an amazing job. I mean, we're so grateful to partner with so many big C-minded churches who really believe in that kingdom growth and want to partner together to reach Richmond, starting with Varina. But there was a need for a church for young families, and we fit that demographic. And so naturally, that was kind of the original draw. We had a lot of families with a lot of kids coming. We still do. We have an incredible ratio of kids to adults. It's a great problem to have. But we began to see that growth and these families who had grown up learning that the church was the place to be on Sunday, but it was the last place to go when you were really in trouble or really needed something. And what a heartbreaking thing that the very first place that people should go is the very last place that they'd ever want to. And so we really started to cultivate a family atmosphere where people could come home, and that's what we want the Rise to be, is a home for people to come and to be a part of and to experience the life change of Jesus, and not be afraid to come with that transparency of, hey, this is the mess that I'm in right now, and I need that transformation to take place.
So we started to look for venues, and the first one that seemed obvious was the local high school. Varina High School, went to them, they said no. We went right next door to John Rolfe. They said no. Baker Elementary, I think, was on fire.
They had a fire.
Yeah. So, you need to have a school that's not in flames.
They were in a big crisis because they had to send all of their students to all the other elementary schools. So, any school talking to us at that point was kind of, nothing short of a miracle in and of itself, because they were all people at the time. So, taking on any extras was out of the question for a lot of the schools.
Oh yeah. And we went to all these different schools and all these different community centers, and we just weren't able to find a place for us to be able to meet until we found the last school.
So Mayfoot Elementary, or I guess if you've lived in the area a while, the Invisible R, Mayford Elementary, is where we stumbled into, and it didn't seem like it was going to be the place, but the people there just welcomed us with open arms. All of the custodial staff, the administrators, they were excited about the vision that God had placed on our hearts, and we're excited to partner with us to reach the community. And they gave us our home.
Mm-hmm. And as I look at where that's located, I mean, what an incredible location that is. Obviously, Route 5 is one of the major roads, I think throughout Richmond, but especially on the East End. And then 295 obviously is one of the biggest highways there is in the entire state. Mm-hmm. And you get the intersection of Route 5 and 295, and Mayfoot is essentially right there.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even on our mind or our radar when we were looking at that, but as we began to just think about it a little bit more, it really opened up so many opportunities for us to be able to have an impact more than just the Varina area, which is home for us, but be able to expand into the New Kent area, the Charles City area, the Colonial Heights area, the Mechanicsville area. It's an awesome place for home for us.
And what a neat thing too, that God literally kept us on the same street as one of our original church's locations. You can take Route 5 all the way from one of our campuses, all the way to the very beacon that led us here, right down to Main Street Station, and stay on basically the same road the whole time. And that God had created that straight and narrow, clean-cut path for us. And we didn't even see it until we lived there. But here it was right in front of us the whole time. And to connect those different chapters of our ministry and continue to stretch us further and further toward the city that we have a heart for. It's just a beautiful part of His plan.
So on September 17th, 2017, we had our first service of the Rise Church, our first public service. We've been having some other gatherings, and that was a dream day, not just for us, but I think for the entire team. Like, we had actually gotten this church started. A packed house, numerous salvations, kids everywhere. Like, that was a good day, and that was the first of so many wins that we have had in that building. Now, that being said, recently we've had some challenges, not because the building is not good, but because our church, praise God, is growing.
Yeah, we had a child dedication recently where we dedicated 19 babies and children, and that was amazing. But it does create a bit of a space issue and a people issue. We need more kids workers always, but we are starting to outgrow the space, and it's a wonderful thing, and we only have access to it on Sundays at the moment. So while we have these awesome groups meeting throughout the week in homes, and that's a great setting that we want to continue, our Wednesday night women's ministry, we sometimes have 20 kids just in a little room to play while we have at least 20 women gathering downstairs, and it's just an awesome season, but one that can only last for so long.
That's it. And I think on even some of the Sundays we've had where parking has been a nightmare. And the truth is, like, if you can't find a parking spot, people probably aren't coming to church. If our nursery is at capacity, moms are going to be a little bit unsettled by that. And it's just that the reality is, like you said, praise God, we have outgrown or are about at that spot where we can no longer do church the way that we have been doing because of how God's been moving.
We have growing pains.
Growing pains, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. So we started to feel probably, I'd say a year ago even, that it was time for us to begin looking for a new place to gather, that's complex.
There's a lot of different options. You know, you could lease a space, which has its pros, but you dump a lot of money into a place that, you know, they could pull the lease at any moment.
Yep.
We pursued a lot of lease options at other buildings, and it's amazing. Nobody wants a church to meet in their space. I don't understand. But it seemed like door after door after door kept closing, and we love Mayford, but again, it's not a forever situation, and we want to be able to increase the opportunities to have our doors open to the community for different ministry purposes, and it's very hard to cram that into a 3 or 4 hour window on Sunday mornings.
Yep. And like you said, we have been exploring so many different options. We even had a team that was literally going around from location to location to location to location, filling out applications, calling realtors. I mean, we have been grinding, looking for a place for us to be able to meet. And just like you said, door after door after door has been shut for us to be able to do some of those different spots. So after checking out all of those different potential lease spaces and being rejected over and over and over again, we kind of felt like, you know, maybe we're not supposed to try to push this, just shove a door open, that if God has brought us to this point, clearly He's going to take us into our next season. Like we know that He's beginning to go ahead and stir something up. He's beginning to let us know that things are about to shift. We're feeling it. Our leadership team is feeling it. But we don't want to try to push a door open when God's got something better for us. And so we kind of just surrendered that idea, which was a tough idea. Like I remember somebody had given us a call about a piece of property that was going to be perfect, and we were ready to take the money and put it down to be able to secure the piece of property. I was in Texas at a training when that happened, and by the time I got back home, the property had already been purchased.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the moment where I was like, you know, God, I'm grateful for what you've done thus far, but I gotta just give it to you right now and stop trying to force it by myself. And so that was really in the summer, and we decided during that time that maybe we just needed to stop doing it on man's effort and take a season where for 40 days we could just do a season of prayer and fasting. And that was kind of what our next step was going to be. And so we began this season of prayer and fasting. It was the first ever 44 that our church, only 44 that we've done so far. But we decided that we were going to take these 40 days and really just believe that we could accomplish more by allowing God to set the pace than we could ever do by ourselves. So our leadership team got together, and we really felt like there was 4 main things for us to kind of focus on during that season.
And one of those things was for our home. Where was the church going to go to make a new home? And that very property that had been such a discouragement from seeking that had actually come available the week following our decision to do that 40 days of prayer and fasting. And so we had been out of town again when we got the call, and they said that they could hold the property, but we needed to come up with some earnest money. So we got back into town, and that weekend we're still thinking, okay, God, you know, you've brought this to us twice, but we don't have any money.
we were not in a spot where we could lay down the cash to be able to do that.
And it was after service that Sunday that someone approached us and said, hey, you know, do you have a building fund? And we said, as a matter of fact, we are starting one. And
today, right now,
in
this conversation.
You're it. And they just presented us with the most generous gift that allowed us not only to secure the property with earnest money, but also to pay for some of the things that it would take to really explore whether this was going to be a good option for our church home.
And so that was on Sunday. The following Monday, we brought some of our team out, some of our leadership team, and we began to walk and pray on the property, and we began just to feel this unifying decision that very similar to how when we decided Verina was going to be our home, that this was going to be the new home for the Rise. And we're excited about it. We're believing for it. And we knew we had to act fast, and it was amazing how God began to bring different players into the equation. One piece of property turned into two pieces of property, two pieces of property turned into three pieces of property, one giant gift turned into multiple giant gifts. It was just amazing to see how God moved in the life of our church during that 40-day season.
We are thrilled to announce that as of Monday, November 4th, we, the Rise Church, are now the proud owners of 16.11 acres, which will be the future home of the Rise Church.